Get ready to witness the most jaw-dropping courtroom meltdown in television history. When Karen Mitchell, a self-entitled suburban mom who thought her Google law degree made her smarter than a real judge, walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with a smirk and a folder full of internet printouts, she had no idea she was about to face the most humiliating 47 seconds of her life. What started as arrogant laughter ended with her sobbing uncontrollably on national television, begging for mercy from the same judge she had just mocked to her face. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Karen didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed. What Judge Judy did to her in those 47 seconds was so devastatingly brutal, so legally precise, that it became the most viral courtroom moment in daytime TV history. We're talking about a woman who walked in thinking she was about to school America's toughest judge, only to discover that Judge Judy had been setting a trap from the very first question. Every eye roll, every interruption, every disrespectful comment Karen made was being cataloged by a legal mind that had crushed 20,000 cases. Before breakfast, picture this. Karen Mitchell, the kind of woman who demands to speak to the manager at Starbucks because her latte foam wasn't perfect, strutting into Judge Judy's courtroom like she owned the place. Her confidence was off the charts. She'd spent weeks preparing what she thought was an airtight case, armed with legal articles she'd printed from random websites and a superiority complex that could fill Madison Square Garden. She looked at Judge Judy like she was just another minimum wage employee who needed to be put in her place. She had no idea she was about to meet a woman who had been demolishing entitled people since before Karen was born. The case seemed simple enough on the surface, just a dispute over a damaged designer handbag worth $800. Karen was suing her former friend for ruining her precious purse at a dinner party. But what the audience didn't know, what Karen herself didn't realize, was that Judge Judy had already spotted 17 different lies in Karen's initial paperwork. 17. Before Karen even opened her mouth, Judge Judy knew exactly what kind of person she was dealing with, and she was ready to make an example out of her that would echo through courtroom history. Karen thought she was facing just another authority figure she could bulldoze with her loud voice and aggressive attitude. Instead, she was about to encounter a legal hurricane with 25 years of experience, crushing people exactly like her. Judge Judy had seen every type of scammer, every variety of liar, and every breed of entitled person who thought they could manipulate the system. But Karen was special. She was about to become the poster child for what happens when unstoppable arrogance meets immovable judicial authority. The most insane part? Karen actually thought she was going to win. She told her friends, posted on social media, and even practiced her victory speech. She walked into that courtroom with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for her behavior. She was about to learn that Judge Judy's courtroom isn't like the customer service desks where Karen usually got her way by throwing tantrums. This was a place where respect mattered, where evidence ruled, and where entitled attitudes went to die spectacular deaths. Smash that like button right now, because what you're about to see will restore your faith in justice and make you believe that karma is not only real, but it has perfect timing. Hit subscribe because in the next 15 minutes you'll witness the complete and total destruction of the most arrogant Karen ever caught on camera. This isn't just a courtroom case. This is a masterclass in why you should never, ever disrespect Judge Judy. The 47 seconds that changed everything are coming up, and trust me, you won't believe what this entitled woman thought she could get away with. The Judge Judy courtroom was buzzing with its usual electric energy, cameras rolling live, capturing what everyone assumed would be another routine small claims case for millions of Americans to witness from their living rooms. The audience had settled in, expecting the typical back-and-forth drama they'd come to love. Production assistants made their final checks, the bailiff took his position, and Judge Judy reviewed her notes one last time. Nobody in that room had any clue they were about to witness television history in the making. This was supposed to be Karen Mitchell's moment of triumph. She'd spent 3 weeks preparing for this day, convinced she'd cracked the code on how to beat the system. She'd studied Judge Judy episodes, read legal forums, and even practiced her arguments in front of her bathroom mirror. In her mind, this wasn't just about winning $800 for a damaged handbag. This was about proving that she was smarter than everyone else, including America's most feared TV judge. She'd bragged to her neighbors that she was going to make Judge Judy look foolish on national television. The case file seemed straightforward enough, almost boring by courtroom standards. Karen Mitchell versus Rebecca Torres, a dispute over a designer handbag allegedly ruined during a dinner party. The producers had scheduled it as a quick 15-minute segment, nothing special. But Judge Judy's experienced eye had already caught something in the paperwork that made her lean back in her chair with that knowing smile. She'd seen this type of plaintiff before, the kind who thought volume and attitude could substitute for facts and evidence. Karen strutted into the courtroom, like a conquering hero returning from war. Her blonde highlights were fresh from the salon, her designer outfit carefully chosen to project success, and her leather portfolio clutched tight with what she believed was her secret weapon. She shot confident glances at the cameras, already imagining herself going viral for all the right reasons. Judge Judy watched this entrance with the calm patience of a predator studying its prey, knowing exactly how this performance was going to end. Judge Judy opened the case with her signature, no-nonsense approach, her voice cutting through the courtroom air like a scalpel. "Ms. Mitchell, you're suing Ms. Torres for $800, claiming she damaged your designer handbag at a dinner party. Tell me what happened." It was a simple question, the kind Judge Judy had asked thousands of times before. But Karen's response would immediately signal that this case was going to be anything but ordinary. Karen didn't just answer the question. She launched into a theatrical performance that would have made Broadway actors cringe. "Your Honor, this woman completely destroyed my limited edition Coach bag through pure negligence and carelessness," she began, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sophistication that screamed entitlement. But then came the first red flag. Instead of sticking to the facts, Karen started editorializing, rolling her eyes dramatically and adding commentary like, "as anyone with common sense would know," and, "obviously, she has no respect for other people's property." Judge Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, the first warning sign that experienced viewers knew meant trouble was brewing. "Ms. Mitchell," she interrupted, her tone still professional but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "I didn't ask for your analysis of her character. I asked what happened to your bag." The audience could feel the shift in energy, like the moment before lightning strikes. But Karen, blinded by her own arrogance, completely missed the warning. Instead of backing down, Karen doubled down on her disrespect. She let out an exaggerated sigh, the kind reserved for dealing with incompetent store clerks, and said, "Well, if you'll let me finish my story, Your Honor, I was trying to explain the context." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. In 25 years of presiding over her courtroom, Judge Judy had dealt with thousands of difficult litigants, but the audacity of someone actually sighing at her in dismissive frustration was something else entirely. Judge Judy leaned forward in her chair, her famous steely gaze locking onto Karen like a heat-seeking missile. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dropping to that dangerously quiet tone that made seasoned attorneys break out in cold sweats. "Did you just sigh at me in my courtroom?" The question hung in the air like a sword ready to fall. Karen, incredibly, seemed to think this was still going according to her plan. She had no idea she'd just lit the fuse on a legal bomb that was about to explode in her face. What happened next would go down as one of the most shocking moments in courtroom television history. Karen, completely oblivious to the volcanic rage building behind Judge Judy's controlled exterior, actually had the audacity to smirk. Not just a little smile, but a full-blown condescending smirk that screamed, "I can't believe I have to deal with this incompetent person." She turned slightly toward the audience as if she was about to share an inside joke with them about how unreasonable this judge was being. Judge Judy's response was swift and surgical. "Ms. Mitchell, let me save us all some time here. Based on the evidence you've presented and your attitude in my courtroom, I'm ruling in favor of the defendant. You get nothing. Case dismissed." The gavel came down with the finality of a guillotine blade. It should have been over. Any reasonable person would have accepted the loss, learned their lesson, and walked out with whatever dignity they had left. But Karen Mitchell was not a reasonable person. The explosion that followed was unlike anything the courtroom had ever witnessed. Karen's face went through a color transformation that would have impressed a chameleon, cycling from shock white to anger, red to indignant purple in the span of 3 seconds. She shot up from her chair so fast it nearly toppled over, her designer portfolio spilling papers across the floor like confetti at the world's worst celebration. "Are you kidding me right now?" Karen shrieked, her voice climbing to decibels that could shatter wine glasses. "This is absolutely ridiculous. You clearly don't understand basic contract law." The audience gasped audibly. Even the bailiff, who had seen everything in his years of service, took an involuntary step forward. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had ever had the sheer insanity to tell Judge Judy she didn't understand the law, but Karen wasn't done. Oh no. She was just getting started on what would become the most spectacular courtroom meltdown ever captured on camera. She actually pointed her finger at Judge Judy, wagging it like she was scolding a misbehaving child. "I did my research. Lady, I have case precedents that completely contradict your so-called ruling. You obviously haven't been keeping up with current legal developments." The courtroom had gone beyond silent into some kind of alternate dimension where sound itself was afraid to exist. Judge Judy sat perfectly still, her hands folded, watching Karen's tirade with the fascination of a scientist observing a particularly volatile chemical reaction. The cameras captured every second of Karen's professional suicide, every gesture of her spectacular self-destruction. Then came the moment that would be replayed millions of times across social media. Karen, in her infinite arrogance, actually turned to face the camera directly and let out a dismissive laugh. "This is exactly why I don't watch this show," she announced to America, as if she was delivering a movie review. "She clearly has no idea what she's talking about. I mean, seriously, how hard is it to understand simple property damage law?" The laugh, that condescending, entitled, absolutely earth-shatteringly stupid laugh, was the final nail in Karen's coffin. She had just mocked Judge Judy's intelligence, dismissed her legal expertise, and insulted her competence on national television. The 47-second countdown to Karen's complete annihilation had officially begun, and Judge Judy's eyes had just turned into laser beams of pure judicial fury. What happened next was 47 seconds of the most brutal, precise, and absolutely devastating verbal annihilation ever witnessed in a courtroom. Judge Judy rose from her chair with the slow, deliberate movement of a hurricane gathering strength. Her eyes locked on Karen, with the intensity of a predator who had finally decided to stop playing with her prey. "Let me educate you, young lady," Judge Judy began, her voice dropping to that terrifyingly calm tone that had made grown men weep, "about what real law looks like." She reached for Karen's scattered papers, holding up the internet printouts with the same disgust someone might show toward contaminated evidence. "These pathetic articles you printed from legaladvice.com are not case precedents. They're not legal research. They're garbage written by people who couldn't pass a bar exam if their lives depended on it." Karen tried to interrupt, her mouth opening, like a fish gasping for air, but Judge Judy's voice cut through her attempt like a sword through silk. "Did I give you permission to speak? No? Then close your mouth and learn something." The audience was frozen, witnessing a masterclass in judicial authority that would be studied in law schools for decades. Judge Judy picked up Karen's so-called evidence piece by piece, dismantling each argument with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a warlord. "This article about property damage law, written by a paralegal who was fired for incompetence, this case study you highlighted, it was overturned on appeal 3 years ago. And this legal opinion you're so proud of, it's from a blog run by a man who was disbarred in 1987 for fraud." The color drained from Karen's face as Judge Judy continued her systematic destruction. "You want to talk about current legal developments? I've presided over 20,000 cases. I've forgotten more law than you'll ever pretend to know. You've handled exactly 0 cases, but you think 3 weeks of Google searches makes you qualified to lecture me?" Judge Judy's voice began to rise, building to a crescendo that would echo through television history. "You came into my courtroom, disrespected my authority, mocked my intelligence, and had the unmitigated gall to suggest that I don't understand the law that I've been practicing since you were in elementary school. Karen's hands were visibly shaking now, her earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. "Here's what's going to happen," Judge Judy declared, her words falling like hammer blows. "Not only are you getting nothing for your ridiculous handbag claim, but I'm awarding maximum court cost to the defendant, $2,500. You want to disrespect my courtroom? You can pay for the privilege." The audience gasped. Karen's mouth fell open in horror as the reality of her situation finally penetrated her thick skull of entitlement. Judge Judy leaned forward, delivering the final blow with devastating precision. "And let me give you some free legal advice since you seem to need it so desperately. The next time you think about mouthing off to a judge, remember this moment. Remember how your arrogance just cost you $3,300 and your dignity on national television." Karen's world was crumbling around her, and the cameras captured every second of her realization that she had just been professionally executed by a master of the craft. The 47 seconds were almost up, and her complete emotional breakdown was about to begin. Smash that like button if you think Judge Judy just delivered the greatest courtroom smackdown in television history. Comment "justice served" if you believe Karen got exactly what she deserved for her outrageous disrespect. But hold on tight, because what happens next will show you the true cost of thinking you're smarter than Judge Judy. Karen's about to learn that actions have consequences, and hers are going to be absolutely devastating. The transformation that occurred in Karen Mitchell over the next 60 seconds was so complete, so utterly devastating, that it redefined what it meant to be humbled. On national television, the woman who had strutted into the courtroom like she owned the building was about to become a sobbing, broken mess begging for mercy from the same judge she had just insulted to her face. It started with her voice. That confident, condescending tone that had carried her through years of bullying retail workers and intimidating customer service representatives began to crack like ice under pressure. "Wait," she stammered, her hands reaching out desperately toward Judge Judy as if she could somehow take back the last 5 minutes of her life. "Wait, that's not fair. You can't just change the rules like that." Judge Judy's response was colder than a Montana winter morning. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You came into my courtroom and treated it like your personal comedy show. You mocked my intelligence, questioned my competence, and laughed at my ruling. Now you want to discuss fairness?" Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority, each word landing on Karen like physical blows. The reality of her situation was starting to penetrate Karen's thick wall of entitlement, and the cracks were showing everywhere. Her perfectly styled hair was beginning to come undone as she ran her shaking hands through it repeatedly. Her designer outfit, chosen so carefully to project success and superiority, now made her look like she was wearing a costume to a party where she didn't belong. The leather portfolio that had contained her secret weapons lay scattered across the courtroom floor, like the remnants of her shattered confidence. "Your Honor, please." Karen's voice was rising in pitch, taking on the whining quality of a child who had just been told they couldn't have ice cream for dinner. "I was just trying to defend myself. I didn't mean any disrespect. I was just passionate about my case." The audience watched in fascination as the same woman who had been lecturing Judge Judy about legal precedents was now trying to rewrite history in real time. Judge Judy was having none of it. "Passionate? Is that what you call rolling your eyes at me? Is that what you call sighing when I asked you a simple question? Is that what you call turning to my camera and telling America that I don't know what I'm talking about?" Each question hit Karen like a slap, and the color in her face continued its journey from normal to pale to absolutely ashen. Then came the moment that broke Karen completely. Judge Judy addressed the camera directly, speaking to the millions of viewers watching at home. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when entitlement meets accountability. Ms. Mitchell here thought she could come into my courtroom and treat it like a customer service desk, where throwing a tantrum gets you what you want. Well, this isn't Target, and I'm not a teenager making minimum wage." The humiliation of being called out on national television, of having her behavior dissected and criticized in front of millions of people, was more than Karen's ego could handle. The tears started as just a shimmer in her eyes, but within seconds they were flowing freely down her cheeks, carrying her carefully applied makeup with them in dark streaks that made her look like a melting wax figure. Please, Your Honor, Karen sobbed, her voice now completely stripped of its earlier arrogance. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I made a mistake. Please don't make me pay all that money. I can't afford it. The desperation in her voice was palpable. This was the same woman who had walked in talking about her designer handbag and superior legal research, now reduced to begging like someone asking for spare change. Judge Judy watched this meltdown with the detached interest of a scientist observing a predictable chemical reaction. Oh, now you're sorry? Now you want to show respect? Where was this attitude when you were wagging your finger at me and telling me I don't understand the law? Her voice carried no sympathy, only the cold satisfaction of justice being served. Exactly as it should be. The bailiff had moved closer, not because Karen was dangerous, but because her sobbing had become so intense that she was having trouble staying upright in her chair. Her friend, who had come to support her, was now staring at her phone screen, probably wondering how quickly she could distance herself from this disaster. Even the court stenographer, who had seen everything in her 20 years on the job, was shaking her head in disbelief. Karen's crying intensified as the full weight of her situation crashed down on her. She wasn't just losing money. She wasn't just losing the case. She was losing her dignity on national television, in front of millions of people who would remember her as the most arrogant, disrespectful plaintiff in Judge Judy history. Her name would forever be associated with this moment of complete and utter humiliation. The judgment stands, Judge Judy declared with finality. Ms. Torres, you are awarded $2,500 in court costs. Ms. Mitchell, you are dismissed from my courtroom. Next time, show some respect. The gavel came down one final time, sealing Karen's fate and ending what had become the most spectacular courtroom meltdown ever captured on camera. The courtroom fell into stunned silence as Karen was escorted out, her sobs echoing through the hallway like the ghost of her former arrogance. What had started as her moment of triumph had become a cautionary tale that would be shared for generations. Judge Judy had just delivered more than a legal ruling. She had given the world a masterclass in why respect matters and consequences are real. Within hours, the clip exploded across social media. Karen's mocking laugh and subsequent breakdown became the most viral courtroom moment in internet history. Millions shared it with captions like, "This is what happens when you mess with Judge Judy," and the moment entitlement died. Karen Mitchell had achieved fame, just not the kind she had dreamed of. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Karen's social media accounts were flooded with comments. Her local community recognized her from the show. She had become the poster child for everything wrong with entitled behavior, a living reminder that disrespect always comes with a price. Judge Judy's handling of the case became legendary among legal professionals and everyday viewers alike. She had shown that in her courtroom, arrogance doesn't pay. It cost you everything. Karen learned the hardest lesson of her life. When you disrespect authority, authority will teach you exactly why it deserves respect. The moral was crystal clear. In Judge Judy's courtroom and in life, humility wins and arrogance always gets exactly what it deserves. Smash that like button if you believe Judge Judy delivered the justice Karen desperately needed. Comment, respect the court, if you think every entitled person should watch this video as a reality check. Hit subscribe for more epic moments where karma catches up with people who think they're above consequences. Remember, in Judge Judy's world, respect isn't optional, and neither are the consequences of forgetting that lesson.